Okay, we're going to work on a reviewing for our test tomorrow. It involves a couple of different projects. First of all, we're going to deal with the sum and the product of a quadratic equation. And we have to remember a formula here. The sum is negative b over a, product is c over a. So it's very simple putting the numbers on. B, in this case, is this value right here. So it's going to be negative b, so negative 8 is positive 8 over 3. That's it. And then the product is c over a. This is c right here. So 27 over 3, which will be reduced to 9. Normally what happens, we reduce fractions if they become whole numbers. Otherwise, we leave them as improper fractions. That's it. We're done. Don't need to make it a decimal. Okay. Second one is the same principle. We have negative b over a and c over a. So we're going to say negative b, this is b, so negative 5 over 7. And c over a is negative 9 over 7. And just leave it like that. That's it. These problems here are a little tricky. What we're going to do is move some things around. We start with a function y equals f of x. They're not telling us what the function is. It might be x squared, it might be x squared plus 3x plus whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We're shifting it a certain amount. So every point on the graph shifts this amount right here. And they're telling the maximum point is here. So I don't know what the graph looks like, whatever, it looks like something like that. The maximum point right here is negative 3, 5. The whole graph is being shifted 7 units. So basically what's happening is we're taking this graph here and we're shifting it. Let's just put a graph around this here. Hold on a second. I'll do this. So this would look like okay. So this point right here, let me go back to the color. I'll go here. This point right here is negative 3, 5. That's the maximum point of the graph. And what they're saying is the graph, every point on the graph is being shifted down 7. So I take this graph and I just move it down 7. And now the maximum point is right here. So the coordinates of that basically doesn't change the x, the y changes by minus 7. So the answer would be negative 3. Negative 3, comma 2, negative 2. That's the answer. So that's what we're looking for. That's the new maximum value. Okay, we don't have to always draw this. We could have just said the x doesn't change because there's no change here. The y changes by minus 7, and that's 5 minus 7 is negative 2. That's an easy way to do it. This one here, next one here is similar. Sometimes it's easier to do it on a graph itself. Negative 2, negative 8, negative 2, negative 8's right here. So we're moving it. This one tells us in the x direction, but it goes the opposite direction. So instead of going here, it's going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the points here, this was negative 2, negative 8. I moved left 4 because it goes the opposite direction when it's in the parentheses, and then outside it goes in the y direction the same direction, so down 4. So that's going to be negative 6, negative 12 would be my answer for that problem. Okay, as we move on now we want to find the equation of a circle. So we have to know the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And we have to figure out h and k and r. Center is hk. And the radius is r. So, to figure out h and k, they tell you what h and k are. The center is hk, so this is h and this is k. So it's simply going to be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals something. We don't know what r squared is. So let's figure out what r squared is. Now here's a way that I want you to be able to figure out r squared every single time. We're just going to say the distance between the x's from 2 to negative 3, that's a distance of 5 units. So 5 squared. And then the distance between the y's is 4 squared, and that's going to be r squared. Every time the distance between the x's squared plus the distance between the y squared is r squared. So that's going to be 25 plus 16 equals r squared. 41 equals r squared. They need r squared right here, so I write 41. Be careful. The radius is the square root of 41. But remember, the equation is r squared here, so that goes to be 41. So I just can stop right here. If they ask for the radius, I need to go one more step, but that's it. All right, let's see if we can figure it. The next one's a little trickier because I have the point here, and they don't tell me what it is, but I can look at it and say that's going to be center is negative 4 comma 2. So I know the equation is going to be x plus 4. Remember, it's the minus h, so minus and negative is plus. Basically, the opposite of this number goes here. Squared plus y minus 2 squared. The opposite of 2 is negative 2. And I don't know what r squared is. I'm going to go through the same principle. Only they don't tell me a point. I got to find a point on the circle. Now, it's hard to see what a point like this one here or this one here. This one here is kind of, I have to look for a point that intersects at an intersection of the grid. So I can use this point right here, might work. If I wanted to use this one, I could also use, actually, I could probably use this one too right here if I wanted to. I could use this one here. I can use this one here. I can use this one here. I can use this one here. All those points have intersections on the grid, so I don't care which one. I'll pick one. Let's just pick this one right here. So that point would be 2 and 8. Is that right? 2 comma 8. Because that's, yeah. So if I did that, I can look and say the center from 4. Oh, wait a minute. Is that 8? 1, 2, 3, 4. What am I thinking? 8. That's not 8. That's 6. 6. That's better. Okay, so how far apart are the two x values? Actually, it's negative 2. Boy, that was tough. Negative 4 to negative 2, how far apart is that? That's going to be 2, so 2 squared. And then from 2 to 6, how far apart are the two y values? They're 4. 4 squared equals r squared. So 4 plus 16 equals r squared. 20 equals r squared. That's the number that goes here, 20, r squared. Now, if I chose a different point, like if I chose this one would have been the easiest, 0, 0. How far apart are the x values? That's going to be 4 squared plus 2 squared, same thing. So that's that. Let's move on. Now we got some, these ones are a little tricky here because the best way to do this is to use the calculator, and we're going to graph these. Okay, so I'm just looking, if I were to graph this, no, it's not very good. Let's get rid of that. Hold on a second. Actually, I'm going to go back to this. Let's do this here. I'll make a graph using this. It's probably best. No, that's not good. Okay, if I were to graph this, this is what the graph would look like. It would look like something like this, down here like this, and then it goes up, then it comes down like this, and then it comes up like that. So basically the zeros are the 3 places where it crosses the line, so it touches the line. So there's 1 0 right here, another one here, and another one here. If I look at my graph, that's going to be negative 3 here. That's going to be negative 1 here, and this is going to be positive 3. So those are my zeros, negative 3, negative 1, and 3. Those are my zeros. That's it. The second one's a little trickier because it confuses people. When I do the graph for this one, the graph for this one's going to look a little different. It's going to look something like this. Something like that. I don't know exactly what. But these numbers are hard to see because it's like something like here and here, and it's like 1.1 or something like that. The problem is they're not asking for what the zeros are. The question is how many zeros, how many positive zeros? Well, there's 3 zeros. This is a 0, this is a 0, and this is a 0. So there's 3 of them, but they ask how many positive zeros, so the answer is 2. If they asked how many negative zeros, you'd put 1. That's about all we need for that one. Now we get to this type of problem where we have to solve for x. Now what we want to do for this one is change 25 to be 5 squared. We got to get a common base for 25 and 125. So basically I'm going to rewrite this just as this. This is 5 to the third, that's 125. 3x minus 2. And now the rules for exponents tell me I multiply the exponents here. When I have something to a power raised to a power, I multiply the exponents, so I got 5 to the 6x equals 5 to, now this 3 distributes to the whole thing. So that's going to be 9x minus 6. And now once the bases are the same, I can go ahead and cross them off and just write the problem 6x equals 9x minus 6. Because if the bases are the same, the exponents must be the same if they're going to be equal. So that's going to be, I'm going to subtract 9x from both sides. And I got negative 3x equals negative 6. Divide by negative 3. And I got x equals 2, and that would be the answer here. Okay, you can kind of check if you wanted to put 2 in here. That would be 2. 3 times 2 is, 25 to the power of 3 times 2 is 6 equals 125 to the power of 3 times 2 is 6 minus 2 is 4. And if I did that in the calculator, they would be equal. Okay, same thing for this one. The base is going to be 2 for this one, so it's going to be 2 to the 4th to the 2x minus 5 equals 2 to the 7th to the x plus 5. So this is going to be 2 to the 8x minus 20 equals 2 to the 7x plus 35. So that bases are the same. I can write then 8x minus 20 equals 7x plus 35. And then I go through the steps, subtract 7x. Subtract 7x, I got x minus 20 equals 35. Add 20. X equals 55. Okay, those numbers probably won't even fit in your calculator, but that's what we're going to get. Okay. Okay, expanding this logarithm here. This 1/3's already started to expand a little bit, but what we're going to do is break this up into 2 things here. So I'm going to say 1/3, 1 over 3, parentheses. Now I'm going to break log 7x to the third into 2 fractions, or 2 logarithms. Log 7. Multiplication means addition here. That's what I have. Next thing I'm going to do is distribute the 1/3. So I got 1/3 log 7 plus 1/3 log x to the third. And now the next step is a little tricky. What we're going to do is basically say this 1/3 can be moved up to here. So it's log of 7 to the 1/3 power. Move that up. Plus log x cubed to the 1/3 power. And now, let's move that up a little bit. Now the final thing would be, this would probably be written like this: log cube root of 7, that's the 1/3 power, plus log, now remember to multiply the exponents. 3 times 1/3 is just x, so this is what the answer would look like as best as we can. Okay, the next one here, we're going to condense, means to put them together. So before we do anything, we can't have any numbers in front of the logarithms other than a minus or a plus. So I'm going to get rid of this, change it to, I'm going to write log of x to the 2nd power minus log of y to the 1/2 power minus log of z. Now, the 3 logs combine together to be 1 log, and this is the easiest way to do it. If it has a positive coefficient, this part will be on the top, so x to the 2nd. If it has a negative coefficient, it goes on the bottom. Y to the 1/2, which is the square root of y, and then z, and that's the answer we're looking for right there. Okay, and the last 2 problems deal with figuring out what the type of solutions are going to be. So that means, first of all, I got to figure out b squared minus 4ac. So negative 12 squared minus 4 times 4 times 9. And the biggest problem most people write is when they type it in the calculator, they put negative 12 squared, and this is not correct. It needs to be parentheses negative 12 squared. So this becomes 144 minus 144, which equals 0. And the problem is sometimes I kind of forget what that means. And here's what it means, because b squared minus 4ac. b squared minus 4ac is part of the quadratic equation. Okay, and the quadratic equation is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the thing is, b squared minus 4, we don't have to figure out what the solutions are. They're not asking that. They're saying what's the nature of the solutions. And b squared minus 4ac is underneath the square root sign. That's the key thing. So underneath the square root sign, I'm going to have 0 for this problem, which means I have negative b plus 0 over 2a and negative b minus 0 over 2a. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is look at b squared minus 4ac is 0, so that means the answers will be equal. So the answer would be 4, real, rational, and equal. Okay, the next problem is similar, but before we do anything, we have to get it in the right form. X squared plus 4x minus 2 equals 0. And so now to solve this one, I'm going to say b squared minus 4ac is going to be 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 2. And when I plug that in the calculator, it's going to be 16 minus a negative 16 plus 8, which is 24. So 24 is a positive number, but it's not a perfect square. So in my remembering which one it's going to be, I'm going to have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I look at that and say this part right here under the square root sign is positive 24. So it's going to be real numbers, and it's going to be two different numbers, so they're going to be unequal. The question is it going to be rational or irrational? And since the square root of 24 is not a perfect square, I'm still going to have a square root in my answer, so it's going to be irrational, and that would be the answer to that. Okay, hopefully this helps you get ready for the quiz. If there's questions, come early tomorrow, and we'll figure some things out. Okay.